right, slipping into the shadows. The tiny chapel off to one side would provide the private respite she needed, and she paused to light a candle and put an offering in the box before heading in. She always lit a candle, never sure whom she was praying for. Asking God for money or success in her profession seemed totally crass, and everything else in her life seemed in decent shape, so she'd come to the decision she was paying it forward, at least in terms of prayer, and she was happy with that. She sank into the last of the 5 rows of pews in the chapel, sighing with relief. She'd overestimated her energy. The remnants of the old town wall were much farther than she thought, and she was worn out. She'd trained her body to nap efficiently. 15 minutes, and she'd wake, refreshed and re-energized. She put her hands on the pew in front of her, rested her forehead on them, and fell asleep immediately. The sound woke her. She jerked awake, blinking at the darkness before she remembered where she was. She'd either slept longer than she should have, or not long enough. She felt disoriented, confused, and she shook her head, as if the physical act could toss off the cobwebs. She tried to recall the sound that had startled her. It had been a strange, unexpected noise, almost human, and her skin prickled with the sense that something was wrong. Pushing herself up, she quickly crossed herself, wondering as usual if she was doing it backwards, and stepped back out into the narthex, coming to an abrupt halt as she saw 2 people enshrined by the bright sunlight pouring in the outer doors. The woman was model thin, model tall, and had an interesting, rather than a beautiful face. She was exquisite, as so many Italian and French women were, and Evangeline had learned long ago not to feel inadequate. But for some reason, those lessons vanished in her sleep-fuzzed brain, and she knew she was a grubby mess. The man didn't help. He was just a bit taller than the woman was, perhaps 6 feet, and if the woman was gorgeous, this man was simply... She couldn't think of the word for it. Unlike his companion, he was dressed casually, wearing khakis and an open-necked shirt. The sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. He looked like a beautiful, slightly decadent Italian nobleman come back to life. He had an elegant face, black hair that flowed around it in artful waves, and the kind of dark, liquid eyes you could drown in. His mouth was made for sin. His lean body had a whipcord tensile strength, and Evangeline was in love. She shook her head and laughed softly at the notion, and the sound caught their attention. They'd been so deep in conversation they hadn't noticed her sudden appearance, and they both jerked their heads in her direction with lightning speed, making her feel even more conspicuous. She straightened her shoulders, gave them a smile and a polite "Buongiorno," and moved past them into the darkness of the main church. Signore Corsini was still praying, bent low, and although she didn't want to bother him, she didn't want to go back the other way. It would look extremely odd if she immediately turned around, and she preferred not to face the glorious couple again. She dipped her fingers in the holy water and crossed herself again, her back to them, and started up the aisle. She could feel their eyes on her, which was ridiculous. There was no reason for them to watch her. She was obviously just an American tourist wandering around the hillsides, and she should be the last person to interest them. She was mentally slapping herself upside the head. What the hell had gotten into her? To worry about what people thought of her. She didn't want to look like that woman, no matter how stunning she was, no matter what kind of man she attracted. And she didn't want a man like that. He was too handsome, too elegant, too self-assured. And worse than that, there was a burning intensity behind those dark brown eyes that made her even more uncomfortable. When she dated, she preferred ordinary mortals, men who were slightly offbeat, with interesting rather than beautiful faces. She liked normal men. People you bumped into at the laundromat. Slightly awkward, slightly rumpled, though she couldn't stand academics, most of whom had the morals of an alley cat. A life in academia, following her parents' example, was not particularly conducive to romance if her fellow professors made her skin crawl. But Evangeline was fine on her own most of the time. She considered the fact that she even enjoyed sex to be a major triumph, and she no longer had anything left to prove.